Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 214th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. And slightly different because it's a Thursday morning, not a Friday morning, isn't it, Stan? And
Throwing me completely.
we were due to have a guest. Ross McGill was going to join us, but a late minute problem for him has meant that we've got to look for a new date. So rather than not do a Frankenstein chat, we've just decided we'll do it Thursday morning without Ross. And apparently, one or two of our followers do like it when it's just you and me,
One
Stan,
particular.
or one particular person. Um, but anyway, oh, Stan, should we announce that actually we received an award this week, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we should.
Well, I mean, we're not braggy sort, are we? Really? I don't think we are. I don't think we are. Others may disagree,
I don't think we've got that much to be there.
but we were contacted by. I thought it was just a scam, but we were contacted by somebody to say that were we aware that we were the most popular education podcast in Ottawa.
There you go.
Well,
It did say thousands. It
yeah,
was a competition with thousands.
and actually we weren't fifth. We were first.
And must watch. And somebody done some homework because they've got the average length.
Yeah, the analysis, the analytics. It wasn't me, by the way. Uh,
No,
if anyone's interested, the number of people watching, listening to the videocast podcast does increase by about 25% a year. But yeah, we're never going to be, an internationally famous podcast. But well,
technically.
technically, we are in Ottawa. Anyway, how are
And
you?
it's not it is a coincidence that Andy Hargreaves
Lives
happens to live there.
Yes.
I did ask him directly whether he'd had any influence on it, and he said no. So,
Well, I'm pleased that our reach is much further than we thought it was. As part of this podcast, we've done recordings of people in Greece, Bogota, Ottawa,
yeah.
yeah, I never thought that we would reach such heights. Well, anyway. So, how are you this morning, Stan?
Okay, I had to do a bit of dashing about to drop, well, my son-in-law's van for an MOT, so I had to be out, drop him off, well, pick him up, and I'll have to pick him up later to get his van back, hopefully, if it gets through its MOT.
Right, yeah.
The daft thing was I did the same thing yesterday for my car MOT. We could have coordinated it a bit better.
Well, I'm suffering with my hernia at the moment. It's actually hurting this morning, so it may be a shorter chat if that really kicks in. But anyway, let's start. I mean, what's caught your eye what's caught your eye this week, Stan? Quite a few things, really.
Yeah, there are a few things in the news that are interesting, but not necessarily the thing that caught my eye. Because what caught my eye came out of the blue, and it was just a piece. I think it was on Twitter. It may have been on some other social media, advertising. Excuse me. Alpha School in America, Alpha Schools, where it said children learn twice as fast as other schools, and so I was intrigued. And it turns out it's a machine learning school where they use AI to cover maths, English, and a science, I think. They have four 25-minute sessions in the morning, and in the afternoon, they do life skills. So there was kind of two things for me. One was I liked the idea that they were doing life skills. They were doing the kind of things that I think are important. Equally, I didn't like what I saw of the AI led learning. It wasn't teaching, it was learning, i.e., that children were for 2 hours a day were just attached to a laptop
Mm,
that was presumably taking them through a structured program where the AI decides whether you are competent enough and moves you on to the next level, etc. Now, the boast of the school is that these children have got accelerated learning now and are
mm,
way, way ahead of counterparts in others. and their sort of evidence and science behind it is their thoughts that the brain works in children in short chunks. So 4 times 25-minute sessions with breaks in between is sufficient to do as much learning as maybe traditional schools do in a full day. I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that's what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
appears that they are claiming. Um, but there were some things to really frighten me, and some things to think, yeah, actually, if you could um, have the support of AI to recognize children's like frequent errors,
mm,
things that they're doing right, and take them through. But what I saw in the video, and all right, it was a short video clip, was a child doing some maths and answering the question, simple addition questions, and the computer was saying yes, you're right, and then would move them on to a slightly harder uh, math thing. But it struck me that nobody was checking how the child got to the answer,
yes.
and it could have been a guess. It could have been that they'd done the maths all the wrong way and or twice as much work as they needed to do to get to the solution. And there was no checking out. There was no adult actually around them when they were doing this 2, 4 sessions.
Now, this is, you know, I'm not saying common because I don't know, but I know of a number of schools where this sort of machine learning is given as homework. So there are programs that are available. And my our eldest granddaughter goes to a school where this is made available. So I've seen the one for Spanish, I've seen the one for maths, and I know she does one for English. And in many respects, there is some real sort of merit to it because it actually sort of if you get it wrong, then obviously it tries to sort of find a way in making it slightly easier, so the next batch of questions sort of adjust to your errors. But exactly the point you're making is that the machine isn't clear as to why the errors took place. So I think the issue here is that it needs that human interaction to actually sort of be there to sit and to talk to the child to explain what's your understanding of this. This is not what the machine
Mm.
learning does. It's good at presenting new problems. And I have to say the help button at the bottom is as good as useless, to be honest. You can press this button and it gives you an example. But actually I look at the example and very, very rarely does it actually help me solve the problem. But I would say, just to pick up on the point about progression, is that my understanding about that particular program is that if you stick with it, then it does get you to a certain level in GCSE mathematics. But similarly, the school that she attends does GCSE Spanish in year nine, and
Right.
and so results, and this is a nationally acclaimed school for teaching Spanish. So there's some. I'm not suggesting that our granddaughter's going to do brilliantly well at Spanish, but I am saying that there must be a sense that they're pushing children through a program, with the help of this AI or this facility. So
I think what threw me is I'd sort of understood that AI would be able to do such things, but I'd visioned it in my view with a teacher teaching an area, and then AI would analyze the responses from the child, and then give the teacher some guidance as to where the
where the
child
error.
may need some extra support.
Well, I think it might do that, but I think that most teachers are looking at this saying, well, actually, I've got no marking whatsoever
Mm,
for homework. And actually, I can see because it tells you the performance, so parents know what the performance is. So in a way, I think it's probably I can imagine that it spits out a spreadsheet with all the children's names on it and tells you how long they were on that program for that day.
mm,
What proportion of the sums of the problems they got correct. How often they went back, whether they used the help button. All of this.
yeah,
I think is the stuff that can give you. It doesn't tell you, because you can't speak to the child. You have to speak to the. Well, what's your understanding of that?
yeah.
Where is your fundamental weakness in your understanding of that? Is it the fact that you're not secure on your sort of number bonds, or is it that you simply don't understand denominators or whatever, you know?
Doesn't this sort of get to the absolute nub of what are we teaching and why are we teaching it?
Mm.
Because clearly there's a machine there that can get children to a Spanish
Yes.
level, maybe a GCSE level, high level. Um, and if you can do that quickly, then I see no problem in saying, well, support that, but have teacher input into it. But then use the time you've gained not to do more Spanish or more
Yes.
maths, which is what we tend to do, but to then look at those other areas, those life skills.
No, it's funny. Why you were talking, it made me think about how we probably would have taken this forward as primary school teachers years
Yeah,
back. So we've decided to teach Spanish, say, in the primary sector. So we would have integrated activities around other subjects. Well, at least I would have. I think we would have done
yeah,
this to actually give a better understanding as to the reasons why we might want to learn Spanish. The history of Spain and other Spanish-related countries. Do something around, sort of travels of Spanish explorers and stuff like that. Even if the geography of the main cities, how big Spain is compared to the UK. All this sort of stuff is the stuff we would have done. But actually, this is one of the dangers, isn't it, of let's learn Spanish.
yeah,
Well, why are we learning Spanish is the first question. Why aren't we learning German? Well, we're learning Spanish because we've got a Spanish teacher and it's part of your GCSE course.
yeah.
And that
I mean,
wouldn't
well,
do, would it, at primary?
it used to be, it probably still is. We teach Spanish and French as modern foreign languages because the generation before and the generation before that were taught
Yeah.
Spanish and French. Um, my son actually did Japanese for his GCSE.
And we did Chinese at foreign
You
academies.
say Mandarin was
Yeah, yeah,
quite a
Mandarin,
popular
sorry.
one.
Yeah,
And as I say, if if this is working and help it for me, it kind of removes part of the sin of saying, right, well, if that gets you your GCSEs
mm,
and that's eminently important to some people, then do it quickly and let's look. There was a brilliant tiny thing which set me thinking yesterday on the radio where people write in to praise a teacher, and this person had said a maths teacher was her favourite because he'd said this really important thing to them that unfortunately the things he wanted to teach them, things like how to fill a mortgage application, how to monitor your electricity at home, how to know how compound interest works, blah
yeah,
blah blah. I can't teach you that because I'm not allowed to. So we'll stick with the maths that 1% of you will use in the
yeah,
future. And I thought, if we think like that, why are we still doing it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I can remember challenging a head teacher once who said that she, her school now she felt didn't teach any of the things that she felt were really important. And I just said, why?
Why? Yeah,
Why, as the head of that school, have you abandoned your values, your principles, what you think's important? Because and that time it was literacy and numeracy hour had wiped most of the curriculum out. And it was harsh of me to challenge because probably most people in the room were in the same position. But it just felt and she ended up quite upset about it, which wasn't a good part of
yeah,
mine on me. But it was a saying, well, why have you given things up? Because somebody else has said this is important.
yeah. It's interesting. We've had this discussion this morning, haven't we, about different ways of learning. And we've managed not to discredit either approaches or any of the approaches. We've sort of
No,
tried to use the discussion to have a better understanding about where we've come from. We've not shouted at each other. We've not moaned at each other. We've
where's
not
this going, Frank?
not written to anybody about it. We've not put this discussion on social media yet. But actually, what's caught my eye is the spat between the Secretary of State and the head teacher of Michaela School in London. And I think that there's something here around um, the way you I I think it's wrong to assume that the only way you can show that you're passionate about something is by shouting
Mm.
and being disrespectful. And I think what's come out of this, and even though we weren't there, and actually the minutes of the meeting have been published, but
Yeah.
actually let's face it, minutes don't capture
No.
everything said or the tone, whatever. Um, but it's pretty clear that there was a fairly sort of volatile meeting between the Secretary of State and that head teacher. And as somebody who's met many Secretary of States over the years, many of whom I don't share a political view on life with, I think it is important on all of us to rein ourselves in and to understand our place within the education sector and show due respect to somebody who's been elected by this country's population. I mean, I just think it's incredibly disrespectful, and actually, I th I think that if this was done by anybody else, I wonder what the consequences would be.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I mean, I'm a trustee of a school of a trust at the moment, and if one of our head teachers or the CEO had brought, I think we would view that as bringing the good name of our trust into disrepute.
Yeah.
I think there would be serious consequences, reprimands. I'm not saying sackings, but there'd be significant reprimands, and I just don't think that what was said, the way it was said, the way it's been reported is helpful for education going
No. Well,
forward.
whatever the true nature of it, reading the minutes and the sort of counter argument and the admission that I did interrupt the Secretary of State several times, and I did, that's not a professional discourse, is it? And you would expect two people in those levels. As a head teacher, I would expect to engage in professional discourse with
I,
somebody,
I
not a slanging match.
no, and I've met the Secretary of State on a number of occasions, and I have to say, for whatever, we all have strengths and weaknesses. But every time I've met her, and there was one meeting where I met her where a number of people were quite challenging, but she held it together incredibly well. One of the strengths I think of her character is that she's not somebody that's going to write, sort of get annoyed quickly. She's got that sort of, she has a very stern sort of like, I wouldn't say severe, but she's very sort of focused on what she's got to do. I think I'm not saying it would be out of character for her to lose her temper, but actually the times I've met her, I've been struck by her sort of dogged determination to remain on the task, and
Yeah, I think the other thing that got me, Frank, was you, if you've got something that works well, and I'm sure the head at Michaela would say we've got something that works well,
yeah,
and changes like are being proposed shouldn't even rock the boat, let alone cause so
no.
much issue, because you manage it.
Mm.
You manage it in the way you've almost always managed it, and you just ride the rocky waves and carry on.
I think though that if I think the timing of this is quite interesting because it gets us on to the next issue. So the publication on the 3rd of February of the new Ofsted inspection framework contains within it what you and I call grade descriptors, but they're actually termed toolkits. I think
Yeah.
they've done that in order to make it look as though they're not grades, but they are grades, folks. Don't be under any illusion. These are grade descriptors. And when you look at the grade descriptors and you look at some of the issues within Michaela, there are some warning signs for that head teacher about what would be attention needed or
Yeah.
critical concern sort of thing on the or whatever it's called on the left hand side. There are some things in there that would start to make you worried about the next visit from
But
an inspection team.
but if that was me and I had a school that I was absolutely confident in the quality of what it was doing, I'd honestly say bring it on.
Bring it on, yeah, I agree.
Because, if the outcome is you're going to measure the schools by the pupils' performance and outcome, nothing
Well,
you can do to
I think the issue here, though, Stan, is that, as you said before, being an advocate for a very broad
yeah,
curriculum today,
I
that is not that is
no,
not the
but I
expectation
accept
of the
that,
school, as
and
far
and
as
it's
we're aware, being very
yeah,
careful here.
and it's not something I would necessarily agree with. But if I was in that position of having a school that I was so confident in, wouldn't worry me.
Yes, yes.
In fact, a negative Ofsted inspection wouldn't worry me
No, no, it's probably
because in my mind, I know I'm doing this
yes,
fantastic
yes,
job. So
yes.
I wondered whether there was more to the shake up than we've actually seen.
Yeah.
More maybe something we've not read in the act that it's too hard. But
Well,
nothing I've
yeah.
seen would
I mean,
shake me.
we shouldn't. It was Suella Braverman was involved in Michaela's setup.
Yeah.
So, even at that point, and of course, the head teacher at Michaela has actually spoken at some political events for
Mm.
particular parties, but not for others. So, in a way, you can see how the sort of political lines
Oh,
were drawn
absolutely.
prior to the meeting. And for me, I can't understand what the benefit was of the Secretary of State going to the school when in fact there are 26,000 other schools, some of
It
which,
was it at the school.
yeah,
I
it
don't think
was.
it means at the school.
No, I think it was at the school, wasn't it? Because I think
I
people were
don't
talking.
think so because she's invited the Secretary of State to come and see the school.
Oh, my
So I'm
understanding.
not sure if it wasn't at the DFE
Uh,
because there was a mention of people having to close doors because of the
I thought that was at the school. So,
COVID.
but anyway, I mean, in a way, whichever way it is, bearing in
Mm.
mind that there are 26 or 25, 24,000, whatever the figure is, and here we have a highly successful school. It's interesting that you should choose that one to go to, or invite that head teacher to come and speak to you, because it does feel as though that's something that's likely to lead to
Yeah,
could lead to an event, which I think has, and we've spent 10 minutes this morning chatting about it.
yeah. I just I'm naive sometimes about people that have got ambitions in politics, but I think I just can't get over that if I was so confident about how good my school was, nothing
Yeah,
would
yeah,
shake that.
yeah,
And if somebody said, well, you might end up with a negative Ofsted report, I'd say, well, tell the parents,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
see
yeah,
what they think.
yeah,
It wouldn't bother me. Now, that's not to say I agree with a curriculum that doesn't include certain aspects of the more creative subjects, because I'm firmly of the belief that those are really important things. But I also think that schools that make things work and have something that works, we shouldn't just necessarily write it off.
yeah.
We should look at it and pick the best bits, as we've said with this AI
Yes,
machine learning.
yeah. And
There are some really positive things there. Let's use that to make other things better.
yeah, and let's face it, I mean, I've never visited Michaela. So
No, and I,
the issue here is more around relationships between
yeah,
senior educationalists and the Secretary of State of whichever party of government it is. I think we agree that due respect should be given to
yeah,
Secretaries of State. And that doesn't mean to say you can't disagree, but the
no,
nature of that disagreement, I think, signifies something to young people who are looking at you, looking at your head teacher, who has actually reached the headlines because they had a challenging meeting with the Secretary of State. It's difficult to go in then, isn't it? And then say to those young people about how you ought to conduct yourself when you wish
yeah,
to see some changes, in society, in politics, in whatever. It's just simply saying, well, you can talk over somebody, you can
Yeah.
raise your voice at somebody, you know. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so it's a nice segue into that, wasn't there?
Yeah.
What did you think just before we finish? What did you think of? We had James Mannion on yesterday. We've got a spotlight coming out next week, which is talking about his new book, Making Change Stick. What were your views on that?
I well, I, one, I've not seen the book because I am expecting it. I think his publicity is sending us a copy. I know you got a
PDF.
PDF version of it, so I've not read the book, but the concept of making change stick. Funnily enough, I actually thought afterwards, should change stick? I could see another book saying unsticking school
Fuck
improvement.
change.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, what he's done, a fantastic amount of reading and research into um, improvement in various areas, not just in education, and pick those things that appear to work best and put them together in a program for a school to be able to go through a process of change using, I suppose, the best tools that are available or that he found available across most of the public sector and private sector. Um, my only sort of hesitant is that he did say it was a program,
Yeah,
and
but you
I'm
don't
not
have to use
sure.
the program, do you? It's just it's
Well, I don't know because I've not seen the book.
it's
But the way he
available
was
if you need
suggesting
it.
it,
Yeah,
if you don't use the program, the chances are you'll drop out at some
yeah,
point and it
yeah,
won't make the change. And I'm just not sure schools will take up a program of change. But if you can dip into it, if you can read it yourself and improve the way you lead improvement, then that must be a really good thing.
yeah. I
And
found
certainly the way he talked about how it changed his approach to things, then that's a real positive. But I'm looking forward to seeing the book because school improvement's been a big part of my
I
life, I
like
think.
it. I mean, I think for me, having seen it, I mean, what I find quite helpful is because it's about 400 or so pages long, the book, but it's broken down into sort of quite nice chunks. So the chapters are chapters that you can read on their own, so it's not you don't have to read the 400 pages to get something from it. So yesterday, Sam Gibbs, who has been a guest on here before, asked, is there any sort of material out there about how you do school improvement and making it stick for, for SEND kids, or people, children that have got sort of learning issues. And so there were that I immediately thought of James's book because it does that way of working, and actually what he's promoting is, this idea of trying to get, a diverse group of people together. When you're
Yeah,
going to do sort of planning, sort of the improvement, it's very easy, as he was and we were saying, to get all your mates who agree with you on board, and then you leave all the laggards, the people that aren't
yeah.
bothered. You don't win them over. They just bugger off somewhere else or just ignore it. So I think there was something in the book for Sam. So I was pleased to be able to point the book towards her. But yeah, so for those of you, obviously we enjoyed the chat
Yeah.
with James yesterday. It will be broadcast next Monday at 10 o'clock as part of the Spotlight series. So anyway, my hernia's starting to ache a bit now, Stan. Being stuck in this chair for any length of time, does it? Um, and perhaps next week we'll tell you a little bit more about the FOIs that we've put into Ofsted to see how many people actually knew about the alternative Big Listen amongst the
Right.
senior echelons of that organisation.
Well,
Um,
I'm interested in that.
well, yeah,
Have you
well,
got some replies?
we have started to get some replies, yeah. So it's quite interesting what's coming out and what we know to be true. So we'll know a little bit more next week. So we'll be able to reveal that then when all of these have come back from Ofsted. But anyway, until then, have a great week, Stan.
Yeah, it's going to throw me now because I'm going to assume the rest of the day is
Tomorrow
Friday.
you'll be thinking, oh my, Jill will be bringing a cup of tea into your room at about 10 o'clock, and you won't be there. So anyway, yeah, have a great week, and thank you
Yeah,
everybody for watching, and thank you for all the people in Ottawa who think that we have a great Frankistan chat that makes a difference in education and leadership. So uh, nice to have you on board.
yeah. We'd be really happy to do one live from Ottawa if they want
Yeah,
to
up for that.
cover expenses.
We have done a live one of these, but it was in York.
Yeah,
But we're more than happy to try Ottawa.
they cover expenses. We don't want paying for the actual thing.
No,
We'll
no, we'll just the travel there and a couple of nights in the hotel, business class, of course. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.